Tessa Blanchard's wrestling career was destroyed years ago after being fired from TNA and serious allegations being made against her. Tessa Blanchard went away from wrestling for a while but would make her wrestling return, and I say that as if that's anything new. She's been back in wrestling for a couple of years now, and I actually discussed her return to wrestling at the end of 2022, but when I made that video, she wasn't super active in wrestling, and in the near 2 years since, Tessa Blanchard has been a lot more active in wrestling, being back full time, and there's even some drama surrounding her once again. Let's discuss all of it. If you somehow don't know the story of Tessa Blanchard and have been living under a rock for the last few years, here's a quick summary. Tessa Blanchard is the daughter of Tully Blanchard and debuted in 2014 and quickly rised up through the indies and was part of the Mae Young Classic in WWE and then signed to TNA in 2018, where she would quickly win the Knockouts title, had a passing of the torch match with Gail Kim, and then in a bold move from TNA, she started wrestling with the men's roster, rising up through that division to earn a world title match, with Tessa Blanchard set to challenge for the TNA world title at Hard to Kill 2020, but on the day of the pay-per-view, Tessa Blanchard was met with some serious allegations, as allegations of racism towards another wrestler were made against her, with Allison Kay being the first person to put the story out that she spat on a wrestler and called her the N-word on a Japanese tour, with this wrestler later coming forward as La Rosa Negra being the one involved in this incident. She was also accused of bullying by other women's wrestlers including Chelsea Green, Isla Dawn, and the now Gigi Dolan, who all had stories about negative experiences with Tessa Blanchard. Tessa denied it all, and despite the controversy and heat surrounding her, TNA followed through and she won the TNA World title at Hard to Kill. Tessa would hold the title for a few months before the pandemic took her off TV and her contract would get terminated by TNA during this off-air period due to attitude problems relating to not being able to work and supposedly refusing to send back the TNA World title. And Tessa would take an extended break from wrestling after this, as she obviously still had major heat surrounding her. She would return in 2022 though, with nobody really noticing that she had returned, as she was only occasionally working and it was on lower level US and Mexican indie companies. And that's where we had really last checked in my last video, but 2023 would end up being a pretty busy year for Tessa, as according to Cage Match, she didn't wrestle for the first 5 months, but she became more active in the middle of the year and was working mostly across the US for indie promotions and even did some work for XPW, which I don't know how to explain, but she's just a perfect fit for XPW, isn't she? However, in October 2023, she would make her first appearance for Mexican wrestling company CMLL, who are arguably the biggest company in the country, and this would be a new beginning for Tessa, as she pretty much instantly went full-time with CMLL. And when I say Tessa Blanchard has been active and full-time, it's probably the most active she's been in her entire career, as she has had 103 matches in the last 365 days as of writing this video, according to Cage Match, and that will be missing a few as well, so the number's even bigger. It's been 99% and mostly CMLL matches, with the occasional US indie appearance here and there, and since arriving in CMLL, she's worked against the likes of Stephanie Vaquer, Willow Nightingale, La Catalina, and more. And just recently, in the last month, Tessa Blanchard would start teaming with Juvia, and they would enter a tournament for the vacant World Women's Tag titles, and the two of them went all the way and won the tournament and the tag titles on the 6th of August. So yeah, since we last checked in, Tessa has actually done a fair bit in wrestling actively as a champion for one of the biggest promotions in Mexico in CMLL, who do some big shows and even have a working agreement with AEW. Honestly, in a way though, I'm not too surprised. It's actually a fairly common occurrence that wrestlers who are blacklisted from working in the US due to controversy start wrestling in Mexico and rise their way back up to wrestling in the US occasionally. We've seen the same thing happen with Marty Scurll, but the difference between Tessa and Scurll's returns is that Scurll works more occasionally on lower level promotions, whereas Tessa Blanchard, like I said, is somehow the most active she's been in her whole career, working for one of the top top promotions in the country, even the world you could say, and is a champion for it. And the thing is, I bet that most people probably didn't even realize that Tessa Blanchard had returned to wrestling full time. But I guess the big question is now, with her success in CMLL, is there any chance she could return to full-time wrestling in the US? And to answer that, it's looking like as of now, still no. Probably not gonna happen. Firstly, to get it out the way, I don't see AEW ever wanting to work with Tessa just because of the alliance with CMLL. If they wanted to work with Tessa or sign her, despite all the controversy, they probably would have done it by now, and just because she's working with CMLL, I don't think they're gonna want to use her. AEW have never been interested in signing Tessa Blanchard since the controversy. There's never been any rumors or anything surrounding it. And as for other promotions in the US, it seems as though also as of right now, according to Tessa herself, that the door is closed on that, as Tessa Blanchard did an interview a week or two ago with Straight Talk Wrestling, and in this interview she said that she had talks with wrestling companies recently, but the time just hasn't felt right for a return. Which is, you know, keeping it kind of vague. We have no idea what this means, if it's a major promotion or promotions trying to bring her back on a full-time contract, or if it's just working across US indies. What does she really mean by that? But what we can take away obviously is that she's seemingly saying that she's had offers for a return to US soil. It's just what promotions she's talking about is unknown, what level they are is also unknown. There were actually reports though earlier this year that internal talks had been held in TNA over the idea of Tessa Blanchard being brought back, so maybe she's referring to this, but these were reports that were never followed up on, and TNA is obviously now working with WWE, which may kill these rumors because I don't exactly see WWE wanting to work with Tessa either. And this interview did actually cause drama between Tessa and a WWE wrestler though, as in this interview Tessa Blanchard opened up about her mental health struggles following the allegations against her and her struggles with anxiety. This would get a response from Chelsea Green, who had previously came out with stories of Tessa bullying her, who tweeted out, "I don't wish self-harm or thoughts of suicide on anyone, and I hope she has found peace. However, a simple 'I am sorry' goes a long way. We haven't heard that yet. Accountability matters, and a redemption tour of interviews won't erase the actions of an egotistical bully." So seemingly there are still issues to be ironed out with Tessa Blanchard and the bridges that she's burnt. As far as I'm aware, the only person Tessa did apologize to was La Rosa Negra, who was of course the wrestler that Tessa was accused of being racist towards. But even in this interview still, Tessa holds firm that the accusations against her aren't true, which makes me wonder what exactly was she apologizing to La Rosa for then. Tessa Blanchard would respond back to Chelsea Green in an Instagram post where she posted about her life and how she's living her best moments and just wants to live in peace, with a photo of a diary entry from 2018 where it shows her giving praise towards Chelsea Green as a future star. I don't exactly know what the objective of this post was, but essentially a lot of bridges are still burnt, and though I could see Tessa returning to the US Indies at one point, I wouldn't really be surprised to see that, in all honesty. They'd just be letting anybody in. But I don't see any major company like your WWE, AEW, or TNA signing her, and she'll most likely just stay in CMLL because that's probably the best spot she can possibly be in right now. The only other place I can see genuinely signing Tessa is the NWA. Like, let's be honest here, that's a very realistic scenario. It's crazy to me whenever I come back to the Tessa Blanchard conversation and controversy that Tessa Blanchard is still only 29. Like, in wrestling age, that's still young. And to think that she was on top 4 years ago when she was about 25 and had only been in wrestling for a couple of years is even crazier. Like, I know it's been said time and time again, but Tessa Blanchard truly was one of the biggest wastes of potential in wrestling of all time. Like, Tessa Blanchard was meant to be a star for years to come, and she was being built up that way, but her own actions obviously came back to bite her, and Tessa Blanchard may be back and more active than ever, but she'll never reach the heights she was at before, like being the TNA World Champion. Still absolutely crazy that they did that. And hey, Like I said, I bet you probably didn't even realize that Tessa Blanchard was back in wrestling to begin with. But yeah, that's it from me talking about Tessa Blanchard and her return to wrestling. It seems as though she's going to be sticking around in CMLL, given that she's a champion there. But it seems as though the wrestling industry hasn't exactly forgiven her. But let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Do you think Tessa Blanchard will ever make a return to anywhere near where she once was in wrestling? Personally, I don't see it, but sound off in the comments down below and let me know your thoughts. Like this video if you did enjoy it, subscribe for more wrestling content. I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye and keep on rolling.